Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started here on our chapter 4 Kahoots quiz.
Yeah,
If you-
someone can't get it right now.
Someone's in, waiting. Okay, oh, it says it's joining, so hopefully I'll let them in. Thank you. So if you haven't gotten in, you'll see the code still. You can still join. So it'll be down at the bottom right-hand corner if you haven't already joined. So just go to Kahoot it and then type in the code at the bottom right. Hopefully you can see that code on your screen.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, we have a variety of answers here, so let's take a look. So what does 0 represent when you're printing it? True or false? False, good. And 1 is true, right? Okay, so when you're looking at this, if you do equal, equal, that means are they equal to each other? Remember that 1 equals means to actually make it equal to something else, so it's called an assignment operator. But equal, equal means is it? It's a question. So is A equal to B? No, because A is 1 and B is 2. So no, right? So that should be false. So that should get a 0, right? And then A not equal to B. True, right? Because they're not the same. So 1 and 2 are not the same. So that should be true. What about B is less than equal to X? So B is 2 and X is 3. So is 2 less than or equal to 3?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So that should be true.
Yeah.
And then it can be or, it can be less than or equal to. Okay, so Y is 4 and A is 1. So is 4 greater than 1?
Yeah.
True, yep. So it should be false, true, true, true. Okay, that makes sense to everybody? And if you didn't get it, do you see why it's that way? Anybody have questions? Any questions? Y'all good? Okay. So if you saw something like that on your quiz, you'd be good. Okay. Okay, again, we got a variety of answers, so let's take a look. All right, and it's good because now I know what we need to go over. So, all right, and then if it doesn't make sense after I go over it, then maybe come see me for more practice or ask questions if you're still confused. So make X equal to 3 and make Y equal to 2. So if you do X plus equals 2, what does that mean? So just take X and add 2 to it, right? And replace it. So what should it become? 5, good. And then what about Y plus equals 1? What should Y become?
3.
3, good, because you're just taking 2 and adding 1 to it. So whatever it says, like X plus equals 2, take 2 and add it to the value of X and replace it. And then same thing for y. Take y, add 1 to it, and replace it. So that would make x 5 and y 3. So 5 and 3. Okay, so then the question is x less than y? That's the conditional. So that's either going to be true or false. So x is 5, it changed to 5, and y is 3. So is 5 less than 3?
No.
No. Okay. So if it's true, the little question mark means whatever's on the right-hand side of that, the first thing you see, happens if it's true. And then if that's not true, it's false, then whatever on the other side of the colon happens if it's false. So because it's false, what's on the right side of the colon is going to happen. If it were true, what's on the left side of the colon would happen. So it's like a condensed if else statement. You could write if x is less than y and put your parentheses around it, and then put what you want to happen underneath, and then do an else, and then put what you want under that. But this is condensed. So what happens is it does the conditional x less than y, and if that's true, it does the left-hand side of the colon, and if it's false, it does the right. So because it's false, it's going to actually take x and replace it in place of x. So it's going to put x in place of x, but x is, was already 5. It's going to take 5 and replace it. It doesn't really do anything because it was already 5. But if it were true, it would make x 3 instead of 5. So it ends up being 5 because it says take x and replace, what x was, but it was already 5. So does that make sense? Okay. So I'm just trying to use a variety of different things here. So we're practicing the shorthand way. You may never write it that way, but you may see other people write it that way, because you can always write it the longhand way, but other people may code it that way. So you have to understand what they're doing. Okay, good job. So this was a trick one. So what happens is when you look at this, you don't need to have the curly braces because you only have one statement underneath. If you had more than one statement that you're talking about, you'd want to put the curly braces on there, but you don't need to have them. You can have them if you want to. They're optional. So if you set a equal to 1, what happens is if you say if a equals 2 and you just use 1 equal, you're actually making a equal to 2. So this is not a question. So it always evaluates as true because it's not a question. Because make a equal to 2 is not a question, right? So because you didn't put 2 equals in there, if you would have said if a equal 2, that would be false, right? Because a is equal to 1. So it would have said this is false if you would have had the other equal sign in there. But because you only have 1 equal sign, this happens a lot. So that's why I have this on here. It actually is going to say this is true because there's only 1 equals. And when you put your equal signs, you have to make sure you don't put a space between them. You put them together. So 1 equals is called the assignment operator. It means make this variable equal to that. 2 equals means is it equal? It's a question that evaluates the true or false. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, does everybody see the problem with that? So you should probably never do that.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Does that mean in the code that you've assigned both 1 and 2 to A?
Yes. So A becomes 2. Yes. And so it would just evaluate to true, but it would also make A equal to 2. So A would now be 2 for the rest of the program. Yes. So it's not really a question anymore. Okay. Thought I'd throw a switch in there just to make sure everybody understands them. Okay, let's take a look. So does anybody see why we would get, so it should be A, B default, why we would get all of that instead of just A, the one I want? What are we missing? Anybody remember? Break, yeah, so break is what you need to put on all of those. So if you don't want it to go match all of the other cases, so A is 1. So it automatically compares it to 1 and it says, hey, that matches. Go ahead and do what's under there. But the problem is that because it doesn't have a break, it doesn't automatically break out. So it doesn't work like the if else structure, because the if else, if you have an if and an else, if it matches the if, it doesn't do the else. But that's not the case with the switch. The switch actually, if you don't put the break on there, it actually goes and matches all the other ones after it. So if it were, let's say A was 2, it wouldn't match the first one because it would skip that one, but it only does the ones after it if you don't put the break. So it does that one and all the ones after it until it hits a break and then it breaks out. So it's important most of the time. You'll want to put breaks on each one of your cases. You don't necessarily need to have one in the default because that's the next thing it's going to do anyways, but if you put it on there, it won't really hurt anything. But it should have a break under case 1, case 2, and if you want to put it under default, you can, but you don't have to. Because this will happen, you know, and that's probably not what you want to happen. It's to print everything. And so what happens is it does match the right one the first time, but then it goes and matches all the other ones as well if you don't put the break on there. So be careful with that, because this looks like it would work, but doesn't quite do what we want it to do. Does that make sense, everybody? And because I didn't put any end lines or a backslash ends, that's why I put it all just on one line. I kind of did that on purpose because I have a hard time with Kahoot. Every time I want separate lines, I have to take snippets, screenshots of, I can't do separate lines and like the answer choices unless it's an image. And so I just put it all on one line because it won't let me do, unless they're images, it won't let me do multiple lines. Okay. All right, last question. So there's something wrong with this. See if you can fix it. Okay, so let's take a look at what we're looking at. So the problem is this if right here, and you, when you're doing it, when you say score is greater than equal to 90 and less than equal to 100, that makes sense to us when you say that. If you were to say that to somebody, that makes complete sense. But the computer doesn't automatically assume that you're still talking about the same thing. So when you say score is greater than equal to 90 and less than equal to 100, it doesn't know what is less than equal to 100. Like, what are you talking about? It doesn't automatically know that you're still talking about score. And it makes sense because you can compare whatever variables you want. It doesn't assume that because you were talking about score before, you're still talking about score. So it doesn't do that by default for you. It doesn't automatically carry over the variable you were talking about here, because it can be a completely different variable over here and have nothing to do with this. So you have to repeat the variable name over here. So you have to put score, and that's all you need to do to fix it. It's just add score. The rest of the order of them is correct. So you want to do the less than, greater than sign before you do the equal sign. You don't want to have spaces between those two operators. You don't want to say greater than 90 because that doesn't include 90. Less than 100, that doesn't. So if you're talking about like A's, for example, I'm going to include 90 and 100 in there. If you're talking about integers, you could say like greater than 89. That's the same as saying greater than equal to 90. If that greater than equal to is not something that you would typically word it that way, but you have to be careful because with doubles, that'll give you a different answer. Both integers, it would be the same. Okay, so Ands are used for ranges, so I did have a choice on there for or. Ors are used for complete opposites. So like if you're talking about a value that's invalid, let's say like less than 0, greater than 100. Those would be opposites. So you would use or for that if you're saying, because you can have a number that's less than 0 or greater than 100, right? But the problem is if you make this an or, and this will happen sometimes, students will make it an or, this exact line right there, so put the score in there, just like this one. What'll happen is it could be 1,000 and it will be true because or means that it just has to be one side or the other. So if it's greater than equal to 90, 1,000 is, right? So that's true. What about -5? That's true as well because it's less than equal to 100. So or allows you to have pretty much any value when you're doing ranges. It doesn't exclude it to a range. So it works better for invalid. It doesn't really work for ranges. So it has to be and for ranges and or for opposites. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay, so the ampersand is the and the straight up and down line is the or. If you use 1 ampersand, it'll still work, or 1 straight up and down line. But typically, unless we have a reason for doing that, we put 2 of them because that's called short circuiting. So it'll evaluate one side of it, and if it's false, like for an and, it won't go and evaluate the second side because it is a waste of time. And then for an or, if the first side is true, it won't evaluate the second because it knows it's already true, so it won't bother to do that. It's a waste of time. So either of those works. Does anybody have questions about that? Y'all see that? Okay. Does anybody have any questions about any of those? All good? Okay. Everybody okay online? You're all being
I got
quiet today.
2019 points.
Oh, good
That was
job.
2 years ago.
Is everybody online okay? Everybody's being quiet today.
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, just let me know if you have questions. I think I see something that's okay. You're good.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, let me know if you have questions, guys. All right, so what I want to do is I want to bring up the C++ shell and I want to show you some examples here of conditionals. So let's do this basic one. I want to show you this basic program. So this is a very basic program. You're going to enter 2 numbers. And so, enter the first number, take it in, enter the second number, take it in. And then you're going to just determine which number is larger. And so it does use this shortcut. So I wanted to show you this because I wanted to practice this a little bit more. So you have another example. So what's going to happen is it's going to say whatever your number 1 is, and it's going to compare it. If number 1 is greater than number 2, then it's going to go ahead and say larger than. That's the true part. If it's not, then it's going to say smaller than. Okay, so this is that shortcut way of doing if else. That makes sense, everybody? So if I click run, it should ask me to enter a first number. So I can put 5, 3, and oh, I meant to hit 3. Sorry, 5 and 4, 5 and 4. Okay, and 5 is larger than 4. I thought it was hitting 3, but I'm gonna hit 4. All right, so does that make sense? And it still works if I do it. Let's do 3, 5. Okay. So I just wanted to show you that because that gives you a different way to do if else. That gives you another example of that. Does anybody have questions about that? Okay. That one's pretty easy. And if you want these, I post the videos after, so I'm recording it. So if you wanted those examples, you could type them in. Here's an example of a switch with the break that's supposed to be there. Okay. And so this is one that does Roman numeral converter. So you enter a number, let's go ahead and try it so you can see, enter number 1 through 10, and it's going to go ahead and print out the Roman numeral version of that. Okay. So you can see here that you enter a number, it takes in that number, and then it's just a switch based on that number. And so case 1 would be this Roman numeral, case 2, case 3, but see how they all have a break? And so you just go through all the Roman numerals. Now, it's nice to put a default on there. You don't have to, but the default is that you didn't enter something 1 through 10. So if you were to do it and enter an 11, and we don't have them all going up at high, it would say enter number 1 through 10. Okay, so if I enter like a negative number or I enter something greater than 10, it's going to tell me that I have to enter number 1 through 10. Now, when we talk about loops in the next chapter, we could have them enter it again. But at this point, we don't have any way to have them enter it again. But we can do that in the next chapter. I know y'all are super excited, right? Okay. Does anybody have any questions about this? Yeah.
So what is the switch?
The switch, it's just another way of doing like if else structure. So you could do like if else, if else, if else, if else would be the same as doing this. But it's kind of, some people like it because of the layout of it. It's, you know, it's easy when you're comparing like a menu of choices. Like basically here, they're either going to enter 1 or 2 or 3. And so if they enter 1, so if you wanted to do it as a if, you would just say if number equal 1. That would be the same as case 1. And then else if number equal 2. If you like that better, you could do that. You don't have to do a switch. But some people like the way it looks, you know, with the switch, because it's I guess a little less to look at as far as like doing if else, if else if, else if. So it's really up to you. But even if you're not going to use the switch, if you're always going to do if else ifs, that would work just fine. You should understand it in case somebody else uses it in their code. You know what it does. The switch doesn't work well for ranges, but it works well for like something like this where you just have individual choices. Like if you were doing a range and you had decimal numbers in there and everything, then the switch isn't something that I would use. But it works well if you're like, if it's number 1, if it's number 2, or like if you ask them to enter, like let's say you had a calculator and you say enter A for add, enter S for subtract, you know, and so they enter A, and then what do you want to do when it's an A? What do you want to do? You could do if else if to compare what character they typed in, but case using the switch and using cases sometimes looks neater than the if else structure. So yes, everything can be done with if else, but sometimes switch looks a little more condensed and some people like the look of it better. So it's good to know it, but you may choose not to use it. Does that make sense? I hope. See how the default doesn't have the break? You don't need it because but the other ones have it. And we would have that same problem if you didn't put the break on there. Whatever one it matched, it would go and do all the ones underneath that as well. So you have to be careful that you put that in there. Okay. No questions about that one? Pretty easy. Okay. All right. Let's see. This is another one. So what's going to happen is you're going to enter, let me just show you, some runners, some names of runners. So we'll put Bob, and finishing time, we'll put 160. Okay. Number 2, Kate, 175. Number 3, Bill, I'm off the screen now, 180. Okay, so they're pretty close, but it's going to tell you who came in first place, second place, and third place. So just put them in order. So did it right? I didn't have to do them in order when I was doing them. I could have did them in a different order. It should work. Let me show you, and then I can run it again with them not in order. I didn't really intend. I should start with, you know, put them out of order.
Yeah, that was.
I'll test it again with them out of order. But here's where you save the information. So saving the time, saving what place they'll be in. Here you take in the data. So this is just telling you what you're supposed to do. And then here it gets the name of the first runner and takes in their time, the second runner and their time, and third runner and their time. And then here you have to see if it's actually a valid time. So if it's, you know, something that's a negative number, then we don't want to allow for that. You can't have a negative time. So if any of them are negative, then we're going to say that can't be right? Okay. So it doesn't or, so if any of them are negative, it'll come up with only positive values. So you'd have to run it though to start it again because there's no loop in here to do it again. So we'll tell you there's a problem, but you have to run it to do it again. Okay, so if none of those are negative numbers, then we're going to go ahead and do the else part. So if none of these are negative, then we'll go ahead and see who's in first, second, and third. So this first if is going to all right, I think we got that. All right, so the first one's going to check to see if the first time is less than the second time. So did they come in before the second place time that I entered? Did the first time come in before the third? And then that would give you first place, right? Okay, so if it's not the first time that you entered, could it be the second time? So this one checks that is time 2 less than time 1 and is time 2 less than time 3. So it has to be an and, because it has to be less than both of them to be in first place. You have to beat both of the other players. So you see that the first one compares time 1 to time 2 and time 1 to time 3, and they have to both be true in order for you to win. And same thing here. Both of these sides have to be true in order for you to win. It's not required that you put parentheses, but some people like to put parentheses around this part and then extra parentheses around this part. That's optional if you want to. Like, look at this side and look at this side, and then compare them. You don't have to do that, but you can. Some people do that. Okay. If it's not time 1 or time 2, then it has to be the time 3. That's the only other option left. Okay, so does that part make sense? Okay. And then this one is going to see who comes in second place. So if time 1 is less than time 2, but time 1 is greater than time 3, then, or it could be that they're greater than time 2 and less than time 3, then they're going to be in second place. So if they're greater than 1 but less than the other, then they're going to be in second place. Okay. So it checks the options with this one and then checks the options the same with this one with time 2. And it has an or because it has to compare. You have to be greater than 1 but less than the other, but it doesn't matter which one you're greater than and which one you're less than. So it doesn't or, okay, is it this situation or is it this situation? Okay, and it can't be both situations or you would have been first place if you were greater than both. You can't be less than 1 and greater and then have it the other way. Okay, so the only other option left is time 3. So that becomes the else. And again, it's not necessary to put the curly braces on there, but if you want to, you can. Like with your if statement, you could put a curly brace here and then a curly brace here to end it if you want to. It's optional. And then to find out who comes in place 3, well, if your time is time 1 is greater than time 2 and time 1 is greater than time 3, then you were the slowest. So you're going to end up at third place, right? Because the greater, you don't want a greater time when you're running, right? A lower time. So if you have the highest time for both, then you don't win the race, right? So if time 2 is greater than the time 1 and time 2 is greater than time 3, then you were the slowest, and so you're in third place. And if it's not time 1 or time 2, it has to be time 3, right? Okay. So then it just prints off the places because these were just saving with the runner what runner was in first, second, or third. Okay, so let me test it again because I told you I'd do this just to check it because I kind of put them in order last time. So let's do Sue does 190 and then Bob does 150 and then Caroline does 160. Okay. So Bob's in first place because he had the fastest time. Caroline's in second place. She had the next fastest, and Sue's in last place. So it doesn't matter that I put them in the wrong order. Okay, everybody with me? Anybody have any questions about this one? Is that pretty easy? Okay, good. I like that. Or are y'all completely lost? Just don't know what to ask. Is everybody okay? Okay. If you don't feel comfortable asking in class, just see me after class and we can go through it. Remember that I can Zoom with you, and that's a nice option if you're having trouble. If you don't want to ask in class or if you're completely lost. Okay. The last one I want to do, I want you to kind of work on, and then I want to show you what I came up with. So have y'all, you've probably done color mixing before. You've done like the 3 primary colors. Anybody know what they are?
red, red, green, and blue.
Red, blue, and
Green,
yellow.
oh, yellow.
Yeah, because you can mix colors together to get the other ones, right? But you can't get those colors by mixing any other ones. So red, blue, and yellow. Do you know what happens when you mix red and blue? Purple. Okay. What happens when you mix red and yellow?
Green,
Red and yellow, you get orange, right?
Yeah.
And then blue and yellow, you get green. Okay, so let's make a little notepad file here. What I want you to do is to kind of work with this. So we have red, blue, yellow. Those are the three primary colors. So red plus blue equals purple, right? And then red plus yellow equals orange. And then there is a point to this. This won't be on your test, but blue plus yellow equals green. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to have the user enter in two colors. And we want to make sure that they're two primary colors that we can mix with. And then based on, so you should do like an invalid to make sure that they entered one of the primary colors, well, two of the primary colors. And then you're going to tell them what color it makes. Okay. So if they enter red and blue, it should say red and blue makes purple. Okay. So it doesn't really matter what order they enter it in. So if they enter blue and red, it should still say purple. So I want you to try and think of a way, and I'll show you a solution at the end, but I want you to try and think and see how far you can get. And like the next 10 minutes or so, we'll see how far we get. I want you to try to think of a way that you can first do invalid to make sure they entered one of the three primary colors listed at the top. And then see if you can output what color it would make based on what they entered. Okay. And it shouldn't matter what order they enter it. Okay. Now you might want to say something like, please enter your color in all lowercase letters, and just make sure you enter it in lowercase letters. Because when you're doing the comparison of, you know, if it's red, it's different if you compare red with a capital R versus red with a lowercase r. Okay. So does that make sense, everybody? Okay, so I want you to try to do that, and then I'll pull up a solution for you and show you what I have. But I'm going to stop recording here because I'm gonna, well, I guess, yeah, I'll stop recording and then I'll show you a solution. I'll just clip it together so we're not just sitting here waiting in the video. But I want to give you guys some time to work. Do you understand online what you're supposed to do? I'll stop the video and then I'll start recording again with the solution, and then I'll clip it together. Okay. You guys have any questions? Okay, so take about 10 minutes and see what you can come up with, and you can compare yours to mine and you can ask questions if you got stuck, okay? All right, guys, I'm gonna give you 10 minutes and just see what you can come up with.